We traveled to Denver, Colorado in the summer of 2008 to cover the Democratic National Convention. One reason we wanted to go to Denver was to document the phenomenon of agent provocateurs. All over the world and in the United States, police had recently been caught dressing up like protesters and causing disturbances in front of news cameras to demonize the people's right to protest. Being activist journalists, we also wanted to protest the fact that the controlled corporate media was putting issues like the war in Iraq, the 9/11 cover-up, and the loss of liberties in the United States on the back burner.
Get your hands up! 9/11 was an inside job! 9/11 was an inside job!
Mile High Stadium is now called Invesco Stadium. 75,000 people are going to be here. The game is expected to announce its VP pick tomorrow. We've got some demonstrators here in our Freedom Park carriage here as well. We'll get fired despite that distraction. Let's go. There she is, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson of Texas. Senator, thank you for joining us. I'm really dealing with a lot of noise here.
MSNBC was happy to have hundreds of Obama worshipers mindlessly screaming his name. But when we called for 9/11 to be investigated as a false flag attack, MSNBC staff and Obama fanatics got violent.
Of screwballs out here, and I mean truly screwballs, who believe that we were not attacked on 9/11 by terrorists flying planes, that those people really weren't killed by terrorists, that that's not what happened. And in fact, George W. Bush was sitting somewhere in the White House basement with one of these plungers, and he blew up those buildings. That's what these people believe. They are truly crazy people. Just so you know, we're not muffling intelligent dissent here.
Our entire crew were punched, kicked, and scratched over and over again. Our cameramen, who were not even talking, were assaulted for just being there. We weren't even talking about Obama, but it didn't matter. Nothing could be allowed to get in the way of his worship.
It's MSNBC that's attacking the equipment.
Keep guys around us, make sure we're all safe, have a whole crowd, whole cameras always around us. That's the key thing about here, not to get hurt. Let's wait till they go live and let's take it over. Listen, we got a little bullhorn. I make it the little bullhorn stand on these shoulders, go all the way down there. We got the big bullhorn already in front.
People all over us, we went to find the bullhorn, and I freaked out that they beat you guys up.
So listen,
we're going to surround whoever's on the bullhorn.
So listen, I'll be on your shoulders, I'll do the little bullhorn. We have to make a bullhorn here, but we have to stay a little bit back so you can see back.
In the end, they couldn't stop us. 20 minutes after MSNBC employees slashed the cord of our bullhorn, backup arrived.
This is America!
9/11! Talk about the truth behind 9/11! Why don't we talk about the victims' family members? Unanswered questions. This is 9/11! 9/11 was an inside job! 9/11 was an inside job! Don't try to attack me!
tired of you shutting down the debates and keeping Ralph Nader and Dennis Kucinich and people out of it. We're tired of the military-industrial complex owning you and turning this country into a police state, and we're not putting up with it anymore. And we came down here, your MSNBC employees assaulted us and broke our other bullhorn, so we brought 2 more. You break those 2, we bring 4. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job. Investigate 9/11, Keith. Keith Olbermann. Investigate 9/11, Keith. Keith Olbermann. Investigate 9/11, Keith Olbermann. You know Bush did it. You covered Cheney.
Listen to me. Keith asked that you allow him to do his job. As long as you guys are doing this.
Is this Keith's show?
Keith is.
Hold on.
Keith is about to go on.
Is this Keith's show?
Yes. Keith is about to go on the air. He's asking that you respect him and allow him to do
Okay,
his
you know
job.
what I'm going to do? Yeah, but let me just say this. I want to tell you this, sir. You just listen. What's your name first?
My name's Richard Stockman.
Mr. Stockman, because Keith Olbermann told the truth about Dick Cheney planning to stage a terror attack 2 months ago, and he reported on it 2 weeks ago, the Cy Hirsch report about wanting to have Navy SEALs attack larger naval vessels, that we're here because the rest of them won't cover it, and MSNBC people came out and assaulted us. But yes, because Keith Olbermann has reported on stage terror, I am going to leave. I am going to leave. Keith Olbermann has covered the false flag terror, so we're going to respect him as real media.
In a meeting in the Vice President's office, members of the administration sat around brainstorming ideas to provoke a war with Iran. Quote, the one that interested me the most was, why don't we in our shipyard, build 4 or 5 boats that look like Iranian PT boats, put Navy SEALs on them with a lot of arms, and the next time one of our boats goes to the Straits of Hormuz, start a shoot-up. Might cost some lives, and it was rejected because you can't have Americans killing Americans. That's the level of stuff we're talking about. Provocation, but that was rejected.
Denver was a real circus. There were as many as 15 simultaneous protests going on in different parts of the city. We got report after report of police dressed up like anarchists, attacking other police as a pretext to go after peaceful crowds. Though we had our own suspicions, we were unable to confirm that fact. Weeks later, the police admitted that they had indeed staged violent attacks against their own officers in an attempt to justify their oppressive police actions.
I wanted to draw a picture that describes effectively the false left-right paradigm. The Republican Party props up the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party props up the Republican Party. By itself, a single-party system will fall over. But if you take the two-party systems and you lean them up against each other, this is basically the arch. Their force going together keeps them together and makes it become a very strong, stable platform on which they can build their hierarchical New World Order system. So the current two-party system has been dominated and bought up and controlled by the elite that sits atop it. Now, the elite with a one-party system would not be balanced on top of one party. They would be subject to being toppled. But you put the two parties up against each other, they form a royal arch. And now it's very hard to separate those two because they're leaning up against each other. And so Republicans attack Barack Obama. And then the Democrats attack John McCain. And then the population who's down here is trained to see John McCain as representing them personally, as being their daddy, of where their personal power comes from, of their camp, their brand name, their brand of soda. And so this is a controlled paradigm. And really, it's one unit supporting themselves and containing revolution, so that the people who are down here never learn that there is a world outside of this controlled paradigm. We are locked within the left-right paradigm, and then it becomes this huge pageant, this huge distraction where we analyze every facet of the two political parties, never realizing they themselves are simply a front or puppets for a larger power structure. And then they can limit the scope of differences, which, if you look at it, there's almost no difference between the two. instead of getting the people to look outside the box at the wider world.
When you speak mainstream media, to me, it's that no one else counts except the Democrats and Republicans, because that's all the mainstream media will ever give credit to. And when things are done that are so atrocious, to include a third candidate, the mainstream media sits by and lets it happen. I mean, the biggest case in point was 1992 when Ross Perot got 19.7% of the vote, 1 out of 5, roughly 20%. My old physics teacher would tell me to round up, as you always do in physics, so he got 20%. Well, what happened then, and the mainstream media never even covered it. They didn't even expose what went on in our country. Perot scared the status quo so badly in that election that all the way up until that point, all the debates, presidential debates, had fallen under the National League of Women Voters, which you can argue is essentially a fairly neutral group. They have conservative women, liberal women, independent women, whatever it might be. They were in charge. Yeah. Well, what happened then, because Perot scared them so bad in 92, our illustrious Congress, who I might add is made up of pretty well all Democrats and Republicans and the status quo, well, they took the debates away from the National League of Women. They formed another federal bureaucracy now called the National Debate Committee, and ironically, that committee is appointed and it's headed by the former heads of the Democratic and Republican parties. So now all debates are channeled through this National Debate Committee, and they can make up the rules as they go. Now they determine who gets to debate and who doesn't. They make that decision. This body of people that is not elected, it's corporate. They're appointed. You can't remove them if you disagree with them. To me, every presidential debate should have at least 4 to 5 people up there.
Well, that's obvious. I mean, how can we ever have real choice if they only keep it to the two parties?
Well, but see, that's it. As Ralph Nader called it, the two-party dictatorship.
Even though national poll after national poll from 2001 had me on the debates, Buchanan on the debates, they want more people on the stage than, 2 major candidates that are basically spouting the same old slogans that they spouted in weeks before on the campaign trail. They're not really debates, they're parallel interviews. And the Debate Commission is a private company created 21 years ago to get rid of the League of Women Voters, which sponsored debates, controlled by the Republican Democratic Party. To this day, they pick the format of the debate, they pick the reporters who will ask the questions.
So you're saying it's a rigged game?
Yeah, it's rigged for the two-party system. No one else is let in. And the sad part is we, the people, stand by. It's our fault. It's our fault because we stand by and sit on our hands and allow it to happen.
Let many voices be heard. Let the First Amendment be used by all Americans. Open up the debate process. Why are we limiting presidential debates? We don't limit weather reports. We don't limit entertainment.
America has broken its own rules, has broken its own laws. It's time for the citizenry of the United States to actually follow its own laws. If we stay steadfast to the Constitution, at least, we won't be hit so hard with that global agenda. Violence in society is not caused by the people. It's caused by the neglect of leadership. And the police are the #1 cause of violence in society. They make the people jittery. They make the people insecure. Plus, if you look up what a police officer is in the Black's Law Dictionary, the only thing the police are supposed to be doing is keeping the peace. And they do not. So whose fault is it when you have violence in society if you're paying taxes to have peace in society and moral justice? The police are supposed to be the epitome of morality. Our children are supposed to look at a police officer and see an example of what a citizen is. Now they fear them. So if our children don't even respect the police How are they going to respect the law?
The present situation is not the Republic of the United States. What we have is the analogy is that the pirates have come in the middle of the night, they have killed the captain and the crew, and that they have taken complete control of the ship. And this thing that we call the United States government is absolutely an illusion. It has no more connection with the Constitution, the Republic, and the Bill of Rights than the man in the moon.
You know, you go to a doctor and you get a diagnosis. You may not like the diagnosis, but you don't call the doctor names. And you don't get all uptight about it. But when people hear a diagnosis, an economic diagnosis, a geopolitical, political diagnosis, that ruffles their ideology or is counter to their party belief, they really get upset about it. So we only look at things for the way they are, not the way we wish they would be. The panicof'08.com. We knew the panic would come in 08. In November of 2008, we took out the domain name, the collapse of 09. The economic system is collapsing and there's no salvation for it. Current events form future trends. You look what happened during the retail Christmas sales of 2007. We saw women's apparel off 23%. We saw home furnishings and electronics down 27%. We saw luxury items off 35%. These are Depression-era falls. How much more do people have to see before they understand what's happening? When you look at luxury items, understand this thing is collapsing from the top down. Everybody's getting wiped out on this one. This is big. Okay, in 2008, we saw Circuit City, Steve & Barry's, Linens and Things. We saw Sharper Image, Bennigan's, KB Toys go belly up. We're seeing Starbucks, we're seeing Home Depot closing stores. And we're going to see many, many more of them as the year goes on. The question becomes, who is going to rent all of these vacant retail spaces? The answer? Nobody. You're going to see ghost malls. You're going to see empty shops all over. The next level, the commercial real estate sector and the business end. Merrill Lynch mob, the Bear Stearns gang, the Lehman boys, all these people that went belly up or out of business, all these bond companies. Who's going to rent all the vacant commercial office space they're leaving behind, plus the thousands and thousands of others from the Bank of America, the Citigroups, laying off 50,000, 55,000. 1 week in America, we saw some 70,000 jobs evaporate. Who's going to rent all of this empty space? The answer is nobody. You're going to see a commercial real estate collapse that's going to make the residential retail bust look like a kid's game. You're going to see vacant office buildings, vacant malls throughout this country. The collapse of 09. In 08, it was the financial sector. In 09, the commercial real estate sector, and everything else collapses with it. There is no saving the sinking ship. There's too many torpedoes that have been taken.
Zbigniew Brzezinski is a petty Polish aristocrat. He represents a social class called the Szlachta, the lower aristocrats. In German, it's Milchadel, milk nobility, the lowest. And he was trapped in Canada by the Hitler-Stalin Pact. His father was a diplomat serving the government of Pilsudski and this guy Smidley Ridge, right-wing authoritarian Polish governments in the 1930s. He then went to McGill University. He would have gone to Britain. I think he wanted to go to Britain, but he couldn't do it because of various technical considerations. So he then got into Harvard and eventually became the head of the Soviet Affairs Institute at Columbia. I believe that is where he picked up Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, between 1981 and 1983, when both Brzezinski and Barry Soetoro were on the same campus probably in the same department. Look at Obama's graduating thesis, Soviet military disarmament. That's nuclear disarmament. That's absolutely critical because it's a topic that has Brzezinski written all over it. So Brzezinski was, of course, the head of the National Security Council under Jimmy Carter. He is the guy who successfully played the Afghan Mujahideen against the Soviet Union. He has boasted that he lured the Soviets into invading Afghanistan by sending in U.S. Special Forces teams in the summer of 1979, 6 months before the Soviets invaded the country. He's also the guy who played Saddam Hussein, Iraq, against Khomeini's Iran for the purpose of destroying both countries, but of propping up both dictatorships at the same time. In other words, the Khomeini regime by 1980 was showing signs of collapse. So Brzezinski said, all we need is a foreign threat. So let's play Iraq against Iran and we'll keep both of them going. He was also a supporter of the Pol Pot genocidalist regime, and he's generally known for the traditional imperialist method of using one country as a tool against another so that you don't have to get involved and you don't have to face military defeat and all the expense. The ruling passion of his life is a hatred of Russia. He is a Russophobe. He is a ferocious enemy of everything Russian. There's a Brzezinski plan. The Russians will tell you, and I think it does exist. He doesn't publish it, but this is behind the scenes. He would like to divide European Russia into 4 or 5 different countries. He'd like to go back to a situation like you had during the Russian Civil War of 1919-1920, where you had the Bolsheviks in the middle maybe, but a whole bunch of other countries that had broken off, the north, the south, and so forth. So every Russian knows that Brzezinski means furious hatred, fanatical hatred of Russia. So that's what we have to expect under Obama. We're going to move towards some kind of apocalyptic endgame against Moscow and Beijing, with Brzezinski calling the shots through somebody like the most important official of the new regime is already clearly Robert Gates from the Pentagon. He's going to run intelligence, run the Pentagon. He's a clone of Brzezinski and has boasted about it.
That's stroking the masters, or getting the head stroked by the master.
Yeah.
You know, like lap dogs.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's you know, you did a good day's work and the master strokes him and send him on back to their damn doghouse.
Yeah.
I think in most cases, people like P. Diddy and Jay-Z and a lot of these cats, I don't even think they have any political awareness anywhere. Yeah. If it doesn't benefit them financially, they're not really politically astute to the point where they can be very honest and open and candid with us as black men, you know, and black women, to say, okay, tell us what you really think. The camera is not on now. You're not in the studio. You're not on stage. Tell us what you really think. And if what you really think doesn't go hand in hand with what you're telling the people that love, honor, and respect you and buy and support you, then what's really your agenda? You understand what I'm saying? Jay-Z already knows the handshakes. He's already taken the oath. They already let P. Diddy in. You don't get to the $20 million club without getting these people's stamp of approval. Do you understand what I'm saying? But Puffy had the vote or die, which is utterly stupid and ridiculous and idiotic. For a Negro like that to be giving us that kind of ultimatum, you either vote or you die. Jay-Z openly supports Barack Obama. 50 Cent openly supports Hillary Clinton. And
I think he changed his position. 50 Cent, now since she's out, I think he's now supporting Barack Obama.
But that would be a smart move to do that.
Yeah.
Because now you have to be appear to be politically astute, because you don't want to lose that particular clout. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they have to be, so they can be called on by their handlers, by their white handlers.
Right.
So you have to appear at least. See, Puffy tried to appear neutral. Vote or die, galvanizing all the young energy, that demographic between the 18 and 35 demographic, get them out to vote, get them registered. Come to find out that all those names that when you register at the post office for the or register to vote, all of those names go into a database for the selective service draft. And this they're not telling us. So no one is saying, okay, well, this is the electoral process and this is how it works to educate us about voting. They just said, no, come register. And at that time, they want us to vote for Bush or Kerry, and both of them are cousins, and both of them belong to Skull and Bones.